Alright, listen, YouTube. This is going to be a video on genital mutilation. Once again, I had enough videos. See why I am already the guy that talks about genital mutilation. What does it matter at this point? Anyways, this is going to be a video on genital mutilation or circumcision and how logic and reason and research and in some ways common sense can lead to preventing that, and why if you really if you really do your research, you won't do that. And by the way, I've been kind of sick. Not sure if it's my hangover or maybe I got some of the flu. Probably a combination of both. Either way, I'm gonna try to make this video quick and just get to the point as much as possible, because I don't feel like spending much time on here, and I tend to talk about trivial things so much anyways. So I'm trying to get to the point here. And I'm not sure the legitimacy of this or like the details, because I like I said, I have been sick. I've not been on the internet much, but I did see a story that caught my eye, and that was, and I do not know much about El Paso, and that's part of my point here, but somebody said because of the recent shooting in El Paso, Texas, that obviously is very tragic. I hope the people involved in the attack well. I hope they get better, and whoever, if somebody died, sorry about that, but I don't know much about the shooting, but that sounds, bad. But the point that I'm making is because of that, and I'm guessing probably because of immigration, because this is on the border, I think that's towards that area. And just different things that they had heard about El Paso, Texas. Somebody or some people had taken to saying that the conditions in the West Bank or in Jerusalem, where the Palestinians and Israelis are fighting, were probably safer than El Paso, Texas. Now, again, I do not know much about El Paso, Texas. I do not live there, whether I have not. And there's a point to this, by the way, just stay with me. But I do not know much about El Paso, Texas. I have not lived there, and I do not know much about Israel. I have not lived there. I certainly have not been to both or lived in both, and I doubt many of these people have lived in both, if either one. But what they do is, if these people had heard about things about El Paso, Texas, and because of the shooting, and of course we have shootings in many cities in this country, that's becoming quite the problem. But because of the last shooting, in fact that it took place in El Paso, Texas, they're now going to saying something. It seems to be as idiotic to me as saying that that the West Bank and Jerusalem and Gaza is safer than the conditions in El Paso, Texas. That I'm guessing not to be true. And again, I can't say for sure, just like he can't say for sure, because I haven't been to both. Just like I think with genital mutilation, and this goes back to not knowing things, not doing research, not experiencing something, and then thinking you know more than other people. When it is to where I have done the research, but many of these people don't do research, and not only are they talking about the issue, but they're actually performing an operation on their child without correct information. And I would say if you don't know something about an operation, it doesn't seem to be as if though you need to, then you shouldn't do the operation. I don't care what it is. And if you do need to, well, then you'll do the operation. We fucking deal. But the point is, anyways, just like, for example, they'll say circumcision doesn't cause you to lose sensitivity. Well, they don't know that, and I can't say for sure either, but I know that. But if you do the research, but that's why they should be talking about it. And as far as I go, I did do the research, and I do know that you are removing 20,000 nerve endings. That's a fact. And you're also removing about half the skin from the human penis, the male regenerative organ, reproductive organ. You're removing, again, 50% of the skin of the penis. That's a lot of fucking skin, and you're removing 20,000 nerve endings. So it would seem to me logical that that area might numb, or you might not be feeling as much. I mean, again, that's 20-something thousand nerve endings. You think about what that's going to do. And beyond that, you're preventing something, because again, just like with El Paso, Texas, and you're saying that about them, well, just like that, something might happen even though it's a rare condition. And maybe this is not the best metaphor, but like whatever. I'm really, like I said, I don't really want to be making this video, but I just wanted to get this over with and make the video. But also people what was I going to say? But also people mutilate their child penis to prevent things from happening. Well, again, you don't know something's going to happen. There's actually a very small chance something's going to happen, all because you heard about something happening. And even if you've experienced something happening like that to someone else or even yourself, the chances are very rare as to where if you do this, then you know something's going to happen. And the thing that you're probably just going to end up having to do anyway is circumcision is what you're now doing to begin with. So what is the point in doing something to prevent something to prevent the same thing? If you need to do it, then do it, because then you did it and the child will, know that you needed to do it. And there will be a reason for that. But if you're just doing it for the sake of, but if you're just doing it to prevent something else from that, that's just idiotic. In the majority of cases, the main primary reason for all of this is cosmetic anyways. And it has nothing to do with hygiene, really. And most people know that now, though all those myths have been debunked. Those things are not true. And it just seems odd to me. And beyond that, you also have to keep in mind, or remember rather, that a lot of that's based on stigma or kind of fear and propaganda and stuff attached to having an uncut cock. I mean, in actuality, they're not very dirty. They're not hard to clean at all. It's very easy. And the only reason you think they look better is probably because you started doing this. And if you go to Europe or any other place in the world, the majority of people there don't do that. So there is no reason, so that the women there or the people there don't think one penis looks any different from another one. In fact, when they come to this country, whether it's cut or not, when they come to this country, they can't believe that we did, in many cases, we do genital mutilation at all. And they certainly can't believe we're still doing it. And it's very bizarre. And again, it's based on myth. It's based on superstition. It's not, for the most part, real. It's very shallow. And, I have a hard time understanding why we continue to do this. But, beyond that, I think it also goes back to something George Carlin. And I also want to say that it's also important to remember, if you do have to get circumcised later in life, first of all, at least there's a reason. And second of all, they will probably give you a general anesthesia and put you under and put you to sleep, or at least you're beginning some kind of anesthesia. In some cases, and even this was one of the things that was so screwed up with insurance companies or insurance covering genital mutilation of children, when it didn't need to happen as a cosmetic surgery largely, was that when they did, in many cases, the doctor would not use any kind of anesthesia, and they would just pocket the money. So they would literally, if that's not torture, what is? And they would literally torture a child with no anesthesia while mutilating his penis. And if your child, and it really depended upon, usually whether or not they did that depended on how long they brought the child back. Because if it was in 30 minutes or 30 minutes, or if it was 30 minutes or less, or under 30 minutes, and they brought your child back in 30 minutes after taking him to be mutilated, then that means he probably did not use any kind of or any form of anesthesia, rather, at all. So that, or at least that is what I have heard, and I have heard that from very legitimate sources. So there's a good chance they didn't even use it. So if your baby had a fast circumcision, they probably didn't use any anesthesia because it takes so long for that to kick in. And certainly they're not going to be using general anesthesia or putting the baby to sleep, simply because they can't do that, because the baby's heart will knock off. And again, I would say if you can't give the baby anesthesia, you probably shouldn't be performing an unnecessary cosmetic surgery, or rather a non-necessary surgery, or especially a cosmetic surgery on them at all, largely. And many babies' heart do give out or knock off, rather, from being mutilated, or they bleed to death. And later on, in some cases, they will have penis rot off, and things happen to them later on from infections. And some babies have to be castrated, and either they are castrated through a botched circumcision, or they're castrated later on because their penis is literally so messed up that it has to be amputated, rather, because of the mutilation, because it wasn't cleaned properly or something didn't happen right. And it's just really disgusting, really messed up, and your child can die from it. And especially if it is done in a situation that isn't a medical setting, it can be even more dangerous. And bush circumcision in Africa, under a much smaller number of people, from what I hear, under a much smaller number of people, there's a few tribes, there's a few groups, when they do male circumcision, at least 22 during those procedures, 22 male children or people die every year from that procedure alone. And in this country, between in mostly medical facilities, between 50 and 120 children die alone in mostly medical facilities. So there's no reason to do that, just because something might happen. And a lot of it goes back to something George Carlin once talked about, and that is, you have this kind of boring hand sanitizer generation where you're afraid of everything and everything's paranoid. And that's the same thing that leads to people being so worried about guns, so worried about video games and music and everything and anything that, that's going to cause this, is going to cause that. When it doesn't work that way, that's not the way the world works. And it comes back down to that person, those people, rather, saying that Jerusalem is a safer place than El Paso, when it isn't, probably. And again, I can't say that for sure, for the same reason he can't. I wasn't there. I've never lived there. So that's all. He's 666.